Hello, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the only board game review show that played both Templeton Peck on the A-Team and Starbuck on the original Battlestar Galactica before disappearing into relative obscurity by the 1990s. My name is Cody. Say, do you like those Vikings? Well, here's a game that takes you all the way back to the carefree days of the Viking invasions. I am, of course, talking about Fire and Axe from IDW Games. Fire and Axe from IDW Games is a game for 3 to 5 players in which you vie to become the most powerful and the strongest Viking warlord of them all. Now, essentially, the game board is of medieval Europe. Now, in the center of the board, you have kind of your wintering zone. This is kind of where you're going to get things ready for your great Viking expeditions. Now, there's going to be in the center a space for a good that is in demand at that particular time. More on that later. But you're also going to be able, while you are there, to kind of provision your ship with crew and with goods to try to trade with. Now, each player also gets a little board that represents its Viking ship that they command. And there's 5 spaces you start with at the beginning of the game. As you move into the second age, you're going to have 6 spaces. As you move into the third age, you're going to have 7 spaces. So as the game goes, you can kind of do more things and carry more stuff with your ships. Now, when you are in the wintering zone, as you are putting the crew on your ships or the goods on your ships, every time you put something on your ship, it costs you a day. Time is kind of your currency. Days are kind of your currency. So it costs you a day for each item you put on your ship. Then you move your fellow from the wintering zone to a home zone. This can be Norway, Sweden, or Denmark, depending on kind of where you want to go from there. And that costs you nothing. You can just move there. But then when you actually start sailing to go where you want to go, wouldn't you know it, that too costs days. So on the other side of the day track, you move up your sailing. Now, if ever the amount of time you've provisioned and the amount of time you've sailed, if ever they hit 7, a cumulative total of 7, then your turn is over. There's nothing more you can do. You've kind of hit the end there, at least as far as sailing or provisioning. There are some tasks you can do, and I'll talk about more about that later. Now, what's kind of motivating you in this game is off to the side of the board you have the Saga decks. Now, you're going to start with the Saga in kind of level 1. Eventually, you're going to move into Saga level 2, Saga level 3. And there are going to be 3 cards laid out. And these kind of say you need to trade with a bunch of cities here, or maybe you need to settle a bunch of cities here. You need to do things in certain areas of the board. So it's going to kind of push you to go in certain directions. Now, once you provision, once you've sailed, if you're pursuing those cards, what you can do is you can begin to trade with the various cities. Now, most cities on the board are kind of in these kind of 3 city regions. Now, one of them kind of has a relatively big city, and you can try to trade with them. You trade with them, essentially you just put your good there, and you get some victory points for that, depending on whatever the city pays out. It tells you right there on the board. And that's one way of getting money. So in that sense, it's almost like a basic pick-up and deliver game. But there's some other things you can do, some other tasks that you can do as well, beyond just trading. Now, you can attempt to destroy one of these big towns. You're trading with the ports, and they're all various ports, but some of them actually have little mini towns. And you can attempt to raid it, you can attempt to destroy it and claim it. Now, you're going to have to kind of roll dice, and if your dice is greater than the port's value, you can go ahead and take it. And what's nice is if you've already traded with it, it kind of lowers what you have to roll. So that's really a good strategy there. If you take that mini, then you get to keep the mini, and whoever has the most of the end gets some bonus points. But on the bottom, it's going to have a number, and there's random numbers on the bottom. That's how many points you get immediately for raiding that town. Now, in regions that don't have any towns, you can go to any of the ports and you can attempt to settle. And settling is kind of similar, but you're going to roll the dice a little bit different. But essentially, you're still trying to, best the number that's there. Again, if you've traded, it kind of lowers what you have to roll. So you can go ahead and attempt to settle. Now, if you settle, you take one of your crew members off your boat and you leave him there in the port you have settled, and that shows that it's your settlement. Now, there's a few other things going on here. For instance, when you're sailing, you may have some problems because not every day is going to be a clear sailing day. There's a little dial in the bottom, and you essentially can be rotated under certain circumstances, but it's got little holes in it that show how many days in which region, because the board is separated into kind of different sea regions, different sea zones, with the different cardinal points. And essentially, so as you're moving, you may have clear sailing in one, but if you move into another, suddenly you may not have as clear sailing, you may have moved too far, and you may lose some of your crew members. Now, also, too, critically, after you leave your winter zone, when you go to your home, you can spend another supply day to draw rune cards. Now, rune cards, you can never have more than, I think, 3, and they're pretty good. These are kind of effects. These are dirty tricks you can play on other players. These are things that you can do to kind of alter and change certain rules in the game temporarily. One of the things the rune cards can do is trade kind of that most favored good. And so if somebody is loaded up with fish, you can play that. Suddenly it's furs. They're not going to get as much money for that. So you can kind of screw them over and put yourself in a more advantageous position that way. There are also some larger towns on the board: Rome, Constantinople, Paris, and these offer some real big incentives if you can take them. If you can take one of these cities, there's a lot more points than in just these smaller towns around the board. Now, your turn can actually end in a few ways. If you just want to go back to the wintering zone, you can just pick your guy up, move back to the wintering zone. And I think you lose everything that's on there, if memory serves. Or if you have killed everybody, if you don't have any crew left, the same thing. You lose all your goods. It goes back to the wintering zone. There's some different options there to end your turn on. And once your turn's over, of course, it goes to the next person. You go around and around like that. And as you're going around like that, of course, you're bleeding through the saga decks. You're trying to get those objectives met because they mean points. Try to collect sets if you can because that'll mean points. And you keep going around and around like that until the last saga card is on the board. Then there's 3 little end game tokens, and you keep playing around 3 more times until those 3 end tokens are on the board. Once they're all on the board, and they've all been played, and everybody's gone, that is it. That is the end of the game. Then you go to scoring. Now, scoring is, you're going to look at a lot of different factors. You're going to look at who's captured the most towns. You're going to see who's got the most sets of saga cards. You're going to see who has the most settlements. And, of course, who just has the most coins that they've collected throughout the course of the game. You're going to add all these factors together. Whoever has the most points at the end of the game is the winner of Fire and Axe. So, of course, as always, that's just a very bare, basic overview of the game. I don't want to spend too much time with the minutiae of the rules, but there is a lot more going on here, a lot more to this game. Some people have complained about the color of the board. They said it looked very kind of bland, and they weren't too thrilled with it. Personally, I liked the board. I thought it looked really good. I liked it quite a bit. I thought it was a good-looking board. I know some people have said, they had trouble seeing the colors, that that can be a problem for them. But again, I didn't have any problems. I have absolutely stellar eyesight. That's not true. I have a hard time seeing things at a distance with my left eye. I really probably should see someone about that. Anyway, the game is very interesting in the choices it provides. It's a game where, do you want to primarily go after trading? Do you want to aggressively go after the saga cards? Do you want to take on some of those big cities and try to get points that way? This is a game where you have a lot of different options, a lot of different roads to victory, but they're all very simple. They're all very straightforward, easy to understand, and easy to try to accomplish. But what makes this game fun is all the monkey wrenches people can throw at each other. When you want to go for a specific card, but you've still got a provision, somebody else sees it, they're going for it, but they're already on the sea and they've got what it takes. That's really fun, and there's some races that occur that way. There's also, of course, those rune cards, which are really a lot of fun. How they can absolutely throw these monkey wrenches into your plans or your opponent's plans. I really like it. That's pretty smart, pretty fun things that are going on there. I really enjoy that aspect of the game as well. So I'll just say it right now, I really enjoyed Fire of Axe. Now, if I do have one complaint, it's a fairly minor complaint. I wish the game were a little shorter. It just goes on a hair long, I think, for what it offers. But that's a minor complaint. And I think if you're into it and you're playing it and you're really going through it, I think you're going to enjoy it. And I don't know that that's going to be a major concern every time I play it. It just seems, from what I played it so far, it is just a little long. But still, it's a great game. I really enjoy it. I think Fire and Axe is a lot of fun. So the recommendation for the discriminating gamer for Fire and Axe is buy it. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We also ask you to follow us on Twitter. We ask you to like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube. We are The Discriminating Gamer, ladies and gentlemen, and if ever anybody asks you, Viking, you just say, Why not, King?
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
I was listening to the radio the other day.
Yeah.
And they were like, hey, what is going to be Cody's number one game?
It's been on everybody's
They
lips.
didn't know. They couldn't guess. They couldn't guess.